The office is where money changed owners and hands were shook. The heavy-duty safe in the floor might have been a dead giveaway to the shady business that took place. Wads of cash were hidden all over this hellish place, stating that money wasn't an issue. Maybe people got executed for enjoyment rather than wealth. Now, if you haven't figured it out by now, today we're looking at the Autohaven Wreckers map of Azarov's resting place. We're going to be looking over all the totem spawns here, but before we get into that, I just want to let you all know that we do stream throughout the week on twitch.tv/Parklis. You can come on by, hang out, have a good time, ask some questions, whatever. We'll be here. Now, for those of you who are new to Dead by Daylight and you may not know what this video is about, or you haven't seen any of our Surviving the Fog videos, well, what we aim to do here is help show each and every possible totem spawn. Now, each map has a large pool of possible totems that can spawn on the map. When the trial begins, the game will randomly select 5 of these totems and place them throughout the map. What we're going to show you coming up in the video is each and every possible totem spawn location, so you won't be confused when you have to find the killer's Hex Noed, or if you need to place down your Boon Circle of Healing to help get that little bit to make sure everybody escapes. Now, we are going to break this thing down into a couple of different sections to make it easier for you to navigate, figuring out exactly which totem you want to find. Now, in the first section, we're going to go over all the totems that are in the nature section. Following that is going to be your standard jungle gyms. And then finally is going to be the main buildings. Now, these are the main structures that are always going to be on the map. Now, this one's a little different as there are main buildings that swap out, aka the bus and the tanker and the crane. But this will fall into the main buildings as well. You can also check down below in the video, timestamps and chapters are put out, so for easy navigation. I've wasted your time enough. Without any further ado, let's get into Autohaven Wreckers, Azarov's resting place. Alright, now the first totem we're going to look at is going to be in the nature section, and this one is pretty obvious. It is the trees tile. It's a very sparse selection of birch and I'm assuming oak trees. There's really not much here. So when you see a glowing totem, it's very, very obvious. When it's not glowing, it's a little less obvious. However, the totem is going to be on the outside of the tile, facing outwards on the base of one of the trunks of the tree. As you can see, there's not much going on. So when you're passing by these trees, maybe take a quick look on the edge and you might just find a totem. All right, the next one on the list is very similar to the first. This is another tree tile. However, this one has a little bit more to do with it. There's a little bit more items in place. There's sometimes a barrel in the center, but most importantly is the stack of tires in the corner of the tile. Now, the totem here is also going to be at the base of one of the trees. It's dispersed with birch and oak trees, and the totem is going to be facing the outside of the tile on the outside of the tile, much like before. So this is a little variant of the tree tile, very similar, super obvious to find. Moving deeper into the woods, we have the tree rock tiles. The trees get denser and the items in there are more and more apparent. This one has several rocks and several trees flanking these rocks. In the center of the tile are going to be 2 birch trees and a very large section of rock. The totem is going to be there facing towards the center of the tile. Now, usually it's facing the barrel. The barrel isn't always there, but if it is, you can usually find the totem on that side. It's also going to be on the side the trees are that are flanking this rock. So look to the center of the tile and you might just find a totem hidden there. Now, continuing in the tree rock tiles, this one's very similar to the last one. There's a lot of rocks here, usually around trees that are up against these rocks. However, none of these rocks are flanked. Instead, you have what could be a pallet loop, and the tree is up against the larger rock, right where the pallet should be, facing the interior of the tile. And to the left of that tree and up against a rock, that's where your totem's going to be. So keep an eye out. All right, now this one is similar to the last one, where it's another pallet loop situation with rocks that are flanked by trees. However, the larger rock has now been split into 2 by a tree coming up through the center of it. So if you see 3 trees that have 2 rocks in the middle where a pallet could be, the totem is going to be facing the interior of this tile up against where that pallet should be as well, and right at the base of one of the trees that are flanked by 2 rocks this time. So take a quick look and you might just find yourself a totem. All right, now this one is also very similar to the first tree rock tile that we showed with the pallet loop. There should be a pallet loop here as well. However, it's a little bit sparser, less dense, very open. You still have the 3 rocks, 2 trees, and the totem is at the base of the tree up against the larger rock on the interior of the tile. However, there's less stuff here. So very easy to confuse the two, but makes it a lot easier to find that totem since it's in basically the same place. All right, now on this tile, it's very sparse. There's only 2 rocks and a handful of trees, so this one's pretty easy to notice. You find the birch tree up against the base of the large rock on the outside of the tile. The totem is going to be facing inward in that corner where the tree and the rock meet. So if it's not lit, this totem can be pretty easy to miss. But if it's lit, it's pretty hard to miss, as you can see here. So just take a look in that corner and you might just find yourself a totem. All right, now it's hard to call junk nature, but here we have the first in the set of junk nature tiles. This is the high stacked 2-lane junk tile. It's very obvious it has a truck. There's always a well, there's usually a pallet, excuse me. And a whole bunch of junk that makes up 2 lanes that form an H with a center divide that connects the two. Now the totem here is usually going to be on your side where the pallet is, on the left side of the truck, the passenger side, tucked away in a corner at the end of the tile. All right, now oddly enough, this is the exact same as the 2-lane high stack junk tile that we just showed. However, the trash men have been around and started clearing out a lot of the debris. So in this junk tile, it's very noticeable by the single red and white truck and a handful of other junk spread out throughout the tile. But most importantly are the stack of tires that are in kind of a U shape up against one of the birch trees in this tile. That's where your totem's going to be. It's going to be tucked in between these tires. Now keep an eye out for the killer because they can easily trap you here and get a free hit if you're not careful. All right, now the last of the nature junk tiles is going to be the 2-car pallet loop. This is very noticeable because there are 2 cars that are perpendicular to each other that can have a pallet. However, on the opposite side is a very large stack of junk that can also have a pallet here. So this is a very easy to notice tile from basically anywhere. The totem is going to be up against the small car that is flanked by the large birch tree and the stack of tires, and in between up against the car is your totem. All right, ending out our nature tiles is going to be the hill tile. This is seen on many other maps, such as Ormond and also in family residence and many other maps. The hill is only accessible by one side that goes up a path. The other 3 sides are a rock face. The path, if there's a hook on top, the hook is going to be facing the path. Sometimes there's a generator, sometimes there's a chest, and sometimes there's a totem. This totem is right in the middle of it. It's super hard to miss. It's not even up against the rock this time. So take a quick look. Now, as we move into the jungle gym section of the totems, the first one we're going to look at is the 3-lane or the 4-lane or the long, whatever you call it. It's the 3-lane jungle gym because it makes up 3 lanes. There's 2 outer lanes, one of which has a window, one of which has a pallet. The window can either be facing the outside of the tile or the interior. The interior main hall is wider, and there is sometimes a generator, sometimes a hook, sometimes a locker. And the totem is going to be right up against that locker on the interior lane of the tile. And now we come to probably the most common of all the jungle gyms, the actual jungle gym itself. This is on almost every single map, including some of the interior maps. This is most noted by the pallet in one corner, the window diagonally across from that. Sometimes there's a generator, there's always a locker, sometimes there's a hook, and there is sometimes a totem. This totem is on the interior of the tile itself, right up to next to where the generator spawns, wide in the open, not hidden by anything. Shouldn't be hard to miss. Now, moving on to probably the most notorious of the jungle gyms is the long wall, short wall tile jungle gym. This is most noted by one long wall and one short wall that flank a pallet. And then going towards the interior of the tile, there's a little C section that's cut out. There's sometimes a hook, sometimes a generator, sometimes a chest. What's most notable about this one is that this totem is actually in a different spot than most of the other long wall, short walls. This is actually on the short wall facing the interior of the tile in the corner, right where the short wall meets the pallet. All right, now what we come to what is arguably the best jungle gym tile in the game, the long wall jungle gym. This is most noted by the pallet on one side, and on the opposite side of the tile is a long wall that has a single window that splits the middle of it. Sometimes there's a generator in here, sometimes there's going to be a locker, sometimes there's a hook, and sometimes there's a totem. Now, much like in the standard jungle gym, this totem is wide open in the middle on the interior of the tile in a corner where the generator should spawn. All right, now this tile is a very well-known tile as well. This is the L wall, T wall tile. This is most notable by the two sections of the tile being split into two perpendicular walls that form a T and two perpendicular walls that form an L towards the interior of the tile. Now, the totem here is always going to be on your T wall, and in fact, if you see an L wall, T wall tile on this map or any Wreckers Yard or Azarovs in general, this is a guaranteed totem spawn. So there will always be a totem in any L wall, T wall tiles that spawn on this map. All right, now as we move into the main building tiles, the first one of the interchangeable main building tiles we're going to look at is the bus. Now, the bus is a very famous tile as it used to be one of the, if not the most powerful loop in the game, especially on these maps. It has been since changed, so these two buses are split in half and will create a nice big pallet loop. Now, on the side that is usually closed off or sometimes has a window at the back of the bus, that's where your totem is going to be hidden between some tires. All right, the next of the interchangeable main building is going to be the crane. The reason why we call these interchangeable is because it can switch between one of three different structures. It can be the crane, it can be the bus, and it can be, as we'll look at next, the tanker. Now, with the crane is a very obvious structure. You can see it from almost anywhere on the map due to its long and very tall crane arm. Now, the totem here is actually going to be on the back of the crane, up against the back tires underneath the engine, and it's just going to be sitting there. So this is a pretty easy one to spot. All right, now the last of the three interchangeable main building tiles is, like I stated before, the tanker tile. Now, this is a very obvious tile. It is a large tanker that has been exploded. So only about 3/4 of the tanker remains. However, you can still get up inside that tanker. On this first totem we're going to look at, because this tile actually has two different totem spawns. The first one is going to be on the interior of the tanker all the way to the back where the window is going to be. And tucked away in a corner is a decently difficult totem to get to. All right, as stated before, we are still looking at the interchangeable main building tiles. This one, yet again, being the tanker. And like we said previously, the tanker actually has two possible totem spawns. The first one being the one we showed before, which is the totem that spawns inside the back of the tanker. This one actually spawns on the outside, on the side with the car that has crashed into it. Now, tucked away in that corner where the car and the tanker meet just before you get to the staircase is going to be your totem. Pretty easy one to spot. So just take a quick look if you're around the tanker. All right, now moving into our penultimate totem, it is the one and only the illustrious Killer Shack. That's right, this tile shows up on the majority of the maps, and it is very well known. Now, each of the Killer Shacks look very different depending on which realm you're in now. The Killer Shack is most notable. It is a square structure that has two doors, one window, the doors being diagonal from each other, the window being in between the two doors. In one of the doors is going to be your pallet. Sometimes it has the basement. It'll always have two lockers, sometimes a generator, and the totem is going to be on the wall up against the pallet tucked away next to some containers. Before we look at the final totem, I want to thank everyone who made it this far. Remember, if you like what you see, a like is appreciated. And to know when we release more videos, sub and notifications turned on. You know how YouTube works. Now, the final totem is going to be in the office itself. This is on the opposite side of the map of the Killer Shack. And on the interior of the tile is going to be your totem. Now, the office has 2 doors, one of which is usually closed off. It also has a window and sometimes the Killer Shack. Now, the totem is going to be on the wall where the window is, tucked away behind some file cabinets. Now, I just want to let you all know that we love you all very much. And remember, please stay safe out there in the fog.